if the government really wants to implement its program as outlined in the campaign, it would need to, and respect its fiscal bottom line that it also indicated in the campaign, it would mean reducing the size of the public service rather than just capping its growth.
That's federal budget watchdog Yves Giroux on Power Play just moments ago, saying the Carney government will need to make cuts to the public service in order to make good on its spending promises. The Prime Minister has long said he would only cap the public service as a way to rein in federal spending. So is that a realistic pledge when he's also committed to significant new spending promises like that middle-class tax cut? Let's bring back the front bench panel. Mary Ng, Tony Clement, and Nathan Cullen. Mary, it feels like something has to give here. How do you feel about his promise with all of this significant spending while trying to find somewhere to cut when he's saying he's only going to cap the public service?
Well, the public service is a very, very large institution with many employees, and I think the commitment to cap it is a commitment that's been made. But I also think that there's an opportunity to vacancy manage as well. The churn that happens in that organization is real, and I think that there's opportunities there as well. So we'll be interested in taking a look at what the government puts out ultimately in the budget. But I do think that there's some opportunity there in addition to the cap that allows you to also sort of manage your workforce within the civil service by doing things like vacancy management or retooling the way in which they do some of the service delivery using sort of new processes through AI and technology and so forth, which is also what the Prime Minister has also committed to during the election.
Mm-hmm. Tony, I remember when you were the president of the Treasury Board under Prime Minister Stephen Harper, capping or cutting the public service, not an easy task to take on.
No, it was not, and we did a lot through attrition as well, which I think is what Mary was referring to when she said vacancy management, which is a lot nicer term than attrition. Actually, I should have thought of that.
Had you only said that at the time.
If only, the world would be a different place. But in all seriousness, look, this is where the rubber hits the road, folks, which is why you kind of need a budget. As Yves Giroux, whom I respect greatly, the parliamentary budget officer, said on your program, usually you have a budget where you can identify government priorities and at the same time see the pace of spending that the government intends to use for the current fiscal year and future fiscal years. None of that is before Parliament right now. You have the main estimates, yes, which by their definition are estimates. And as Yves Giroux said, there's always a supplementary estimates A and a supplementary estimates B and more spending on top of the estimates. All this stuff is very theoretical at this point. So I think that the parliamentary budget officer has done the country a favor by highlighting some of the inconsistencies, the Liberal platform versus the first days of this government. And none of this is going to be resolved without a budget, folks. That's my conclusion.
And Nathan, the interesting thing that maybe people don't look at in that calculation is, yeah, you can cap or cut the public service, but there's still program delivery that has to get done through the public service. So that is something that they have to manage as well. Nathan, are you on mute? You may still be on mute, Nathan.
Oh.
It's only been a few years that we've been doing Zoom, so I can understand.
First-time caller, long-time listener. Giroux didn't use the same term that he used in some of the interviews with the media, where he called the cuts significant and severe. That would be required to make the balance work. I think that kind of language is going to scare some folks. There's two groups that Mr. Carney has to speak to. One is the public service, the 367,000-odd people who perform those government services, food inspections, border control, all of that. The second group is anybody receiving those services. So we see the extreme examples, and I'm not saying, Elon Musk is showing up with a chainsaw anywhere, but when this is done badly, you end up having to undo stuff, you end up creating chaos and costing yourselves a lot more. I think what Mary talked about is probably the most likely way. But look, there's 10,000 fewer public servants right now than last year. That's a little over a 2% drop in the total number of people working for government. How much can you do through vacancy management? I forget the term already, Mary, but it did sound much more general. Canadians are going to be concerned, are there any severe impacts on getting a passport, on getting over the border, on having safe food supply? Those are the things that people at the end of the day, as well as matching, as Tony said, these two realities. A budget would be really nice. I can see why the government didn't want to present one right now, because do you either do significant cuts, the severe cuts, as Mr. Giroux said in the newspapers, or do you blow through some of your budget promises in terms of trying to get things back towards, not balance, but towards balance?
And Mary, some of the issues that Nathan underlined there, like trying to get a passport, they were underlined while you were in government. And I can imagine the difficulty of program delivery. And at the time, I remember the Liberal government hadn't been shrinking the public service, in the way that Mark Carney is promising that he would. So how concerned are you about programs possibly being shortchanged here by staffing cuts?
I think that I think that we should always care about the delivery of services that government delivers to the Canadian people. And those like inspection of food and border services where you interact with the federal civil service, really important, and those need to stay. But there has also been work taking place now for some time that is really bringing up to standard or to today's world of how you could use technology, for example. I mean, if you take a look at how other organizations work in terms of service, think about passports as one. There's opportunities for just streamlining processes that also ensures integrity, that doesn't necessarily need the same kind of process that used to be in a manual way. And in there, if you have a few positions that that someone has retired or there's a vacancy in there, you don't actually have to replace that. You can actually continue to provide good delivery that Canadians expect. And at the same time, manage that vacancy and make your organization better. That is what we should be striving to do to ensure we have a productive civil service on the one hand, and one that doesn't sacrifice on services, and one that ultimately is responsible to the Canadian people in terms of its expenditures.
Government's also in negotiation with some of their most major unions. This is going to have a real impact on those negotiations. Yes. And from the union's perspective, probably not in a positive way as to how are you going to square this circle. We're already losing people. The vacancies, that puts more work onto other people. I know the technological advances can help with a little AI here and there, but you're also going to be asking people to do more work than they did in the past. Meanwhile, I don't see a really generous offer likely to come across the table from the Carney government towards the public service. That's going to create a tension, and it's a tension Mr. Carney would have expected.
Well, and it's a tension.
Tony, what is that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, as an Ottawa MP, I'm sure Mr. Carney will be hearing from his constituents very, very soon. Having been the skunk of the garden party myself in the Harper government on these negotiations, I can tell you they're not very pleasant at the best of times, and these are not the best of times, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Tony, I was going to say, how does that affect those negotiations? You've been in them. Yeah,
it definitely has an impact. The public sector unions obviously monitor every single word and comma of government officials. They will be poring over the parliamentary budget officer's report, and they're not immune from filing bad faith negotiations filings with judges when they feel that the government is abusing their position. So all of these things make for very tense negotiations, and this will be an additional headache added to the many headaches of the Mark Carney government in the months ahead.
It's early days, of course.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be the honeymoon period for the government. This can cause a real political headache. If a government particularly relied on a large percentage of those 375,000 public servants who may have voted for them, not even just in those local type of experiences Tony's talking about, but more broadly, I think the public service probably more likely voted Liberal than anything else in this last election, given the questions and the offers in place.
Okay, unfortunately, I got to wrap it up there. Nathan Cullen, Tony Clement, and Mary Ng, thank you all for being part of the front bench.